Hello, everybody. It's Chris Schmidt with Rocket Lasso, and this is Rocket Lasso Live, Episode 2. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out and joining the chat. We've already got lots of people in there. We've already got questions starting to come in. This is exciting. Everything seems to be working. The audio might be a tiny little bit out of sync. We are getting ready to go. I just want to cover a couple of really quick things. First of all, if you're not already following a Rocket Lasso, let me go ahead and switch the screen over here. So if you're not already following Rocket Lasso, be sure that you head on over to rocketlasso.com in order to not only see the embedded stream and a countdown to when the next stream is, you can also jump on and support on Patreon or join the newsletter, and the newsletter will never be spammy. It's going to be very infrequent. A quick word ahead of time on Patreon. We'll do this one real quick because I hate the advertisement parts. But right now, this is the only thing, this is my only financial income as of right now. So joining on Patreon is a great way to just support what I'm doing. But if you join at the $10 level, then you are going to get access to a special bonus live stream. And actually in this episode, at the very end, for the people who are in the chat, we're going to spend some time planning when those should happen, the special extra stream. And if you're at the $20 level, you get all of the scene files. So any scene files that we make today, you would get access to those, and all of the ones made in the past, starting with Rocket Lasso. So just a little quick shout out there. Make sure you're following on all the basic social media. We're at Rocket Lasso on Facebook and Instagram. And we got the YouTube channel and on Twitter and .com. So there you go. That's a little pitch. So let's go on over to the cam chat window where you might see a little bit of the chats coming on here. And let's see what we've got. Let's see. Okay. Oh, we didn't recap the rules. Very, very important. In fact, I've got a couple of new ones I'm going to be focusing on a little bit. First of all, it's got to be, if you can have a generic question of something abstract. The example I said last week was you want to make a bale of hay, so you can just go to Google image search and say bale of hay, and then it's a million pictures. Cool. But if it's somebody's specific artwork of a studio or a person made a daily render or this beautiful shoe animation or something, I need to be able to see the artist who made it or the studio who made it. If I don't see that link, we're not going to answer the question. Also, if you're doing that, make sure you call that the specific effect that you want to see, because a lot of the animations tend to have a lot of different effects happening all in one. So call that the specific effect or the specific time code when you're linking to it. In addition to that, I am going to be putting extra effort to making sure I give lots of credit to the artist or studio who made it. I want to put those links in the show notes. I want to put that link in the YouTube description. I want to make sure that credit is going back to the people who made the original work. So with that in mind, we are going to go and start tackling some of these questions. So obviously the focus tends to be Cinema 4D, but it can just be motion graphics in general, or even spending a little time in Photoshop, anything that I might be able to answer or that we can figure out together. So without further ado, I'm going to start scrolling through the chat here. And we've got a link from Luminetrix and another link from Rod. Let's see, an interesting optical illusion, intriguing. It's 6 minutes in, 6 minutes, 30 seconds in. Make sure I turn off the audio. I'm going to temporarily turn off the computer output audio here so you guys don't get blasted by it. And let's see what we got. Direct YouTube link. Let me make sure I switch the screen over. Very important. Very important indeed. Cool. Switch the screen over. Let's go ahead and make sure I've got the camera on up there. Awesome. Okay, so let me copy this link and put it into my proper window. Open up a new one. Cool. Okay, so here's where we're at. So optical illusions. It looks okay. You jumped straight to the time. But first of all, this is Physics Fun. And so that seems to be their channel, at Physics Fun. So make sure you go and give them a follow if we got some cool stuff here. But first, let's find out. Before we get to the final, let's just see how this thing starts. So they're talking about atmospheric anamorphosis. So, okay, interesting. Okay, so it's these kind of cool optical illusions depending on the way these are built and deformed. I've seen these kind of things before. It looks like there's a bunch of different cool ones. So let's go ahead and jump to the specific time code of 6:30. Kill the audio on there. And starting let's see, where are we? Starting right about now. So we got these flat ones. Ooh, and they rotate and they spin around and they become circles. So this is just straight up a physical model. So it's just depending on the perspective. So let's see. Yeah, essentially, yeah, that's what we need to see. We need to see. And by the way, if you didn't know, you can frame forward or frame backward in YouTube with the open caret or closed caret or comma period. Let's see. So, I mean, here's the thing. While this is really cool, it's how do we do this in principle? Because you can see we got like these really complex curves, and my assumption would be from a certain projection level that we could get these things intersecting properly, but it's really, really specific, and I don't know how interesting it will be to tackle. So let's see. I gotta see these different angles to see if it's practical to do at all. Actually, okay. I need this specific spot. Like, okay, see, yeah, here's what I'm looking for. So you see from the front, look at this very, like we got the sharp edge, soft curve, sharp edges on those edges. I feel like we could model it. I don't think it would be particularly fun. So unfortunately, we will move on from there. But having said that, there's a really good chance that, yeah, you can buy this toy for one off the site. There's also a really good chance that if you just go to any of those like 3D printing websites that you could just find this model for either free or for really cheap. So I would suggest going and checking those out. But I'm going to go ahead and just go right back into the chat and see if we can find another link. And everybody start getting more links together so we have more different ones to jump through. But Rod has a link here. It is to a Flickr album. Let's go ahead and manually copy that link so it opens up here in the proper window. Boom. Okay. Oh, it's a straight up photo of some sort of sea creature. And this is from Alexander Semenov, who I'm assuming is a photographer. And it is freaking awesome looking. Look at this weird critter. And there's a whole bunch of different pictures. So it's some sort of sea slug, I'm guessing. I didn't read any description, but I'm assuming it's some sort of sea slug. Whew. So that is pretty cool. I mean, it depends on the, so specifically the question was about the modeling and shading of it. Now, a lot of shading stuff, it's something I'm a little, I guess I'm going to say a little bit rusty on. Rusty's maybe not the right word, because I think this would be kind of the coolest in some third-party renderers. It'd also go a lot quicker, and I am not super well versed in there, so we could spend some time where you guys are seeing me kind of clunk my way around in those, trying to see if I could get something working, or we could try and do it straight up in Cinema 4D in standard or physical renderer. Although I feel like there'd be quite a few challenges there as well. So that would be a little bit, I'm trying to think if that would be good content, if that would be interesting to watch. When it comes to these, I'd prefer to kind of rapidly iterate and get some really good technical info there instead of you guys seeing me learn something. The other live stream might be a little bit more like, hey, let's really slow down and figure these things out, where these are more fun on a technical level. So I'm going to see if we have get any more links going on in here. So we've got a link to another link here from Donna Hammers, and let's go ahead and post this one into. Oh no, that is to HTTP. Let me paste that again. It looks like there's two HTTPs in that one. Nope, doesn't like that link. Either it's posted twice or it's copying in a weird way. There's like a weird face in it or something, so I can't actually click that link, unfortunately. Sorry for that. Okay, we got a different link from Fruso to Twitter. So this is, well, it looks like Fruso might be linking to their own. Oh no, this is you liking what somebody made here. So this is actually from Kang Dan. Oh, I saw this. This is a crazy eye collision rig in Maya. So yeah, this is pretty cool. So yeah, so we got Kang Dan, and they even seem to have shared the file. Of course, that's Maya, and we don't have Maya. But you guys can see what we are. What the point of this one is they made a rig that is making it so the top lid and bottom lid are affecting each other, which is really cool. I do love that. They seem to have built. I mean, they're saying eye collision. I like their comment is this is the first rig I made in Maya. Maya is really very difficult. Having said that, this is a really cool rig. See, how would you would have to make one rig that could drive another. So as far as doing some basic R&D, there's multiple levels here because just straight up rigging an eye can take a significant amount of time. But the more interesting part of this question that I do think would be worth spending a little bit of time tackling would be, could we make some sort of dynamic line that if we move it and it collides with the one below it, that it will move the one below it. So they kind of can affect each other a little bit. There might actually be some relatively straightforward things we could do there by building pairs of controls. And actually, I could show, this is gonna be kind of a technical espresso-y one. And I'd rather this episode be a little bit more rapid fire than last week's giant single question. So we're gonna only tackle very specific elements here. But there's a thing that's really fun to do in espresso that I don't think I've ever really gotten to talk about that much. It's kind of technical, but it's not that hard to put together. So why don't we go ahead and start this. Now, if I were making an eye control, I usually use splines as my control. So I do something like make a star, and I set this to 4 points, and then pinch this small one in, and that becomes this really nice control I could grab. So on an eye, I might go ahead and make this, just turn on the color, change this over to something like a nice green. And then let's just say that this is our eyeball, which is going to be a full size. This control would be way smaller. So I'm going to T for scale that down, move it over. And there we go. Okay, so with that kind of being scaled in position, actually what I would really do is put this at 0, 0, 0. So that's at 0, 0, 0. And then what we do is make a series of these kind of moving across. So a series, thank you, Siri. So with all of those lined up, okay, so we got one. So what I would typically do, and what we will do, is you would make one, and then we'd make another, and then we'd make another, and then these kind of become these different little sections on the eyebrow ridge that we can control. So right now we only need to worry about one of them, and the idea is that I would move up and down and control something. So we can go and make a very, I'm trying to think of what the easiest kind of morphe setup or even joint setup we could do. So we actually have something to drive here. I want it's probably going to be flat because I don't want to spend that much time here. So why don't we go ahead and do it. I'm going to go ahead and make a plane object. And let's go ahead and I'm going to turn on NB on the keyboard shortcut so we can actually see our polygons here. Let's go ahead and make this vertical on Y plus, or I guess it's actually going to be a Z plus. So it's actually up and down, and then I'm going to pull it forward. I'm holding down shift, so I move forward exactly 100. We've actually got all of these points, which is not a bad thing. I'm going to drop this to 10 by 10, and yeah, that's actually pretty good. I like that. I'm going to make this editable, letter C, and let's grab this bottom row. I'm going to hit let's hit UF, which is the fill command. Hold down shift and I can fill this bottom selection in. I can hit delete. What's cool in the new Cinema in R20 is that automatically deleted out all of the points as well as the polygon. So just that's of note. Also, you'll see that's kind of backwards. So if I select it, it's blue. So if I hit the shortcut UR, it is inverse normals. So we flip the normals around so we see the orange side instead of the blue side. And we'll actually see that my control now is perfectly aligning with this polygon, which is pretty much exactly what I want. Now, what my basic thought here is we should make a very small rig that goes across this eye. So my thought is, let's see if we can get this working. If we make a quick selection of all of these edges on the bottom, and I can hold down Control, and erase out that line. So you see I just have this line. Now I'm going to hit Shift-C to pop open our little command window. And now that we've got that, we can go and say, type in the word edge, and now we can find edge to spline because there is no shortcut for that. So edge to spline, boom, converted that edge into a spline. So now we've got a nice little spline right here. And what's cool is it's subdivided exactly the same way. Now what this lets us do, is if I click on the character menu, I can go to conversion, and I can convert a spline to joints. So I'm going to turn on spline to joints, and now we've got a whole series of joints, and they're perfectly aligned with exactly where all these individual spline points are. Okay, working well so far. Now my thought is if we make a what do you call it? A character IK spline. So we're going to right click on the joints, make a IK spline, and then we're going to drag this spline in as the spline it's referencing. Then now we can start creating handles on each of the points of the spline, and if we make them correspond with our nice little controls here, we should have something that is controllable. So this is all basic rigging stuff right now. So I'm going to make a handle, and we can set the indexes individually, but it'd probably be a good idea to make one for every single one and then just start controlling them individually. Although we could, yeah, we will do that. We could subdivide this or get rid of some of the subdivisions on this spline, but I think that might be overkill. We might hit some dead ends here, but let's see if this starts working. So we've got one index. I'm going to go ahead and create one, and you're going to see that it made a null. If I move this null, let me make sure I'm on object. If I move this null, well, nothing's happening. There's probably a reason. Oh, we have to set the end joint right here. So I forgot to do that. So in our tag, we need to tell it where does this joint chain end? I'm going to say it ends with this joint. And now that we've done that, hopefully when I grab this and pull, you'll see that our entire spline is moving up to match it. So that's fine. But what we want to do is go ahead and add, and we're going to keep on adding these until we have as many as we have joints. If I select them all, you see we have 11 elements, so I think we're going to need 11 of these. So I'm going to add, 9, add. So impossible to know if we got all of those there for sure. I'm going to go create, boom, 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 boom. And now we've got one null per, although it's not making the final one, which is a little surprising, but okay, I already made one in the end. So it looks like the index 0 counts for it, so we didn't need this final one. So I can just say remove, and it'll remove the last one. So now if I move this first point, you're going to see that it's going to pull that up. If we move any of these middle points, and this middle one being number 5, if I pull that up, you'll see that will move. So all these are sort of matching. Now in addition to that, I'm going to move this up. I'm holding down Shift. I'll just move it up 100 units. You'll see that our spline is maintaining its length, which on one level is kind of cool. But I'm going to go ahead and tell the grab our tag, and right now our fit type, or our type, is set to fit. I'm going to tell it to be equal, and that means it's always going to be matching exactly the length and shape of what our object was. So because of that, now I should be able to pull this back down. You're going to see that this is going to move kind of nicely along there. So I think that's actually working pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, let's start looking a little, and now we need to bind this to our object. So we've got our entire joint chain, and here is our final geometry for the top lip. We're just going to copy the whole rig for the bottom one. Okay, so we've got this rig. I want to bind these joints to this plane. Hopefully, actually, why don't we save this real quick, because it's pretty easy to mess these things up once we get to a certain point. Let's go to episode 2. We'll go to scene files, and we'll just call this lip rig. Lip rig number 1. Okay, now you see I've got all of my joints and the plane. I'm going to hold down Shift and select through. It selects all of them automatically. And now we can go to our character menu, go to the commands, and go to bind. And now we have bound all of these joints to that. And if I double click on this, and yeah, if I click on that, you're going to see how these have bound to these individual joints. So hopefully, if I were to grab number 5 over here and move it up in the air, we're going to see that geometry shift to come and match everything else. Now, obviously, we're seeing a problem where this is actually selecting everything as we go way up. I hadn't really thought about that. So we could blur these, but I guess what we probably want to do is just erase out all of those. So let me see how easily we can do this. If we select that tool, select our object, and we go to, if we double click, I think we get the weight tool. So we could start setting the absolute value with fall off. I'm going to do a linear fall off with a nice big radius, way bigger radius. Okay, so you can see we got that. So I'm setting the absolute value to 0. So my hope is, that's a little too big now. Let's go to about 300. My hope is I can just kind of erase these out. Okay, that's not quite working yet. Let's go to point mode, not quite working. It might be because we need to also select the joints. So let's see if that, no, not quite working. Let's go back to the tool we're on. This is visible only, not selected only is not on. Auto normalize, I'm gonna turn that off. There we go. So what was happening is the auto normalize was constantly reapplying it. I just want these to be connected to nothing. So I'm just going to kind of click a few times. This is not going to be perfect, but I'm just kind of fading out our effect here. So hopefully the bottom is being fully affected, and I just really roughly put those in. So let's see if that worked. Back to our number 5, move it. All right, a little clunky, but working better. And now what I'd probably do is select our binding, our weight tag, our plane. I'm going to go to character, manager, weight manager, and now we have some cool tools like what do I want? I want smoothing. So if I turn on smoothing, I can apply the smoothing effect. Come on. I can apply the smoothing effect globally to everything. Let's see if I need to select the individual joints. Nope, I don't. Although it does seem like it's automatically, it has to give something some weight, and it's automatically making those like maximum purple. I'm going to turn off auto normalize, and let's try apply. Okay, better. So it kind of blurred all those together. So the hope is that if I remove this, that's a little bit better. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to go with this. We could spend a lot more time. We could link the rest of it to a big face and only have these apply to a certain part. But this is all I was really looking forward for. So now we got this basic kind of lip movement. And if I were to grab a different one, hopefully you can see we can pull that up. So now the basic idea is we could go and pull these controls up and kind of get any shape on the lip that we want to. So we could move all these up. There's a lot of different potential things. We could have possibly used some sort of spline deformer. There's a lot of different potential ways we could have tackled this. But this is the fun way using more of the advanced rigging tools in cinema. So let's move on a little bit to our actual like espresso and controls of how we control the top lip and the bottom lip. So first of all, something I like doing is if I have a control here, we'll just call this, I'm going to just correspond, so I'm going to just call this lip 5. Oh, not shift, lip 5. So by doing that, let me check something here. Okay, so I've made lip 5. Now I'm going to hit Alt G, which is a way of automatically putting something into a null. And you see it's gone into a null now. And usually I would copy that name, paste it in here, and add the word 0. And the reason I do that is if we were to take this lip and we're doing animation, I could actually grab that and, oh, that's interesting. Does the, oh, yeah, this isn't linked up yet. If I were to grab this control and move it somewhere funky, actually, let me take a quick step back. I want to take our null number 5, and I'm going to make it a child of the lip. They're already in the exact same spot, so it's now a child. So now that I've done that, if I grab, I don't want to move that null 5 because it's now a visual control. I can't click a null very well in the viewport, but I can click a spline control pretty well. And there's a specific control that we might talk about later that we could grab. But now I could grab this lip, and I could move, I can grab lip 5, this spline object, and you can see now we're getting animation from that moving around. So that is already working well. But what's cool about putting into this 0 is if I were to just go to my coordinates, I can just type in 0, 0, and it snaps it to 0. And I could also move it off to the side and hit Shift-C, PSR, and then reset the PSR, and it'll jump back to 0. Now, technically, you can use these freeze transformations. I just feel like this setup is a little bit cleaner, so I tend not to do that way. So anyway, the point here being is we've now got a single one of our controls here ready to rock and move up and down. Now, I don't know how many of these will rig up. Maybe we'll do 3 of them. Yeah, why don't we just do a set of 3? So I'm going to copy and paste this lip 5, and we're going to make it instead be lip 6. And we'll rename this lip 6, and let's see where 6 is. 6 is to the left, so I'm going to grab lip 0. I'm going to hold down shift and shift it exactly 40 units, apparently. 40 units to the right. And then I'm going to delete this null, which is a dead null, and we'll grab the number 6 and make it a child. So hopefully if I grab this control and move it up, you can now see that that one's being controlled. All right, we'll just do that process one more time. I'm going to copy it to the bottom. This will be number 4. This will be number 4, and we can just delete that null again. Let's move this exactly 80 over, and now grab null number 4 and make that a child. So with that being copied over, then now we have 3 different controls here controlling 3 different parts of the mouth here. If I were to change our display mode here, and let's hide our joint, and we can even hide our spline, because none of those are particularly relevant right now. Now we could just go ahead and start grabbing our lip controls here and moving it. And let me make a color here so we can see that a little bit better. So now if, as we grab these controls, we actually have a decent amount of control over the way our mouth shape is going. So you're going to pull this down and, pull it, potentially to the left a little bit and start getting like a little bit of a smirk up to one side. But that's not going to work too well without its counterpart on the bottom. And also, I'll just throw it out there that it would be a good idea to, if we were making all of them, but we don't have time to go and do that repetition. So let's go ahead and zero those all out again. You see how easy it was to do all 3 at the same time. So with all 3 of those, what I'm thinking is let's make a quick kind of rig null. So I'm going to make a new null, call it rig, and we're going to grab all the relevant parts that are specific to just this rig. So I'm going to go ahead and drop those in there. We could put these controls in there as well, but this is just the rig, and I tend to put the controls into its own setting. So here I would make a new null and call it like top lip, and then I put all of those into I'd put all of these lip controls into the top lip, and then, if I was being really organized, I'd make another null, and then I'd call this one controls. So this is now the top lip inside of controls, and you see just these children. And we'll even do a little bit of stuff with layers in a second. So having done all of that, we're a little bit more organized. We're going to give it a quick save. Now we're going to go ahead and copy and paste, I guess, everything. And honestly, because this lip is one object, I'm going to go ahead and make that also a child of the rig, but under normal circumstances, that would be one big mesh. So we'd only copy the rig down and not more geometry. But let's go ahead and copy paste everything we need to, which is the entire rig and the top lip control. So copy and paste. And now we can go ahead and, what's the simplest way to do this? Probably just I think I can just click R, hold down shift, and spin it 180 because we got such a simple, clean setup here. So we've got that going. I'm going to make a new material, and we just want to distinguish between the 2 lips a little bit. So we'll just make this one a little bit darker of a gray so we can see between those. And now we've got 2 different sets of controls. And if we wanted to, we could even grab the new top lip, which we should now name bottom lip. We'll get that right eventually. Nope. Yes. Oh, I did it again. Okay, so we've got these separate controls here, and those would move these up and down. If I pull this down, you'll see that it should be controlling, our new bottom rig there. So I wouldn't mind we should have made it a color here so we can get a little bit of something. Let's go ahead and make it a nice green. Let's make it blue. And we'll make this one blue. Okay, so they're distinguished, but we can see them from the background. So now you can see we can grab these bottom lip controls and move those down independently, and you can see we kind of get this nice little mouth thing going. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step. So we flipped all those around. Let's go ahead and zero them out. So we can just zero out on Y. And now let's talk about actually making one control the other. Oh, and I remember what I was going to say. Grabbing these bottom lip controls, they're kind of in the exact same position as those top ones. So what we could do is maybe change the number of points on it. So if I put 3, you can see that they kind of don't overlap. Or we could, go up to 6 so we get a different kind of layout. Potentially we could rotate them. I don't think rotating would do any damage, actually. So why don't we try and do that? If we were to grab each of these individually and spin them. Nope. 3rd time's the charm. 45 degrees, then we're not breaking it. And actually, now I think about it, we don't rotate the lip, we rotate their control, but then they'd be at this weird angle. So, I really don't want to do that. So we'll just do the first trick I said, which is we'll just tick this up too. And now you can see we have individual ones. And in fact, we could change the color as well and make like the bottom lip something very different. So now we can see we could click the top one if we need to, or the side one, and hopefully not overlap. And I'll show you how to select those more carefully in a little bit. But now those are all zeroed out. That's all good. Now let's worry about making this rig on lip 5 where we could control it up and down. So actually, let's put these a little bit more in order, where this bottom lip is going to be in controls and the top lip is above the bottom lip. So I like kind of making those a natural layout. So I think the only thing we're going to have to look at from here on out is the controls. I'm going to give this a save. Let's name it number 2. And so what's the main thing we're doing? We're going to be moving this up and down. And if it goes down below the bottom lip, we want the bottom lip to go down. But we don't want it to be stuck to it all the time. Now, I wonder if we could do this with constraints, actually. I was going to do it with espresso. But we might be able to do it with constraints. Okay, well, let's find out. On our bottom lip, I'm going to right click and let's go to the character tags and make a constraint. And with a constraint, let's go ahead and turn on clamp. And with clamp, let's go ahead and turn on a target. The target is going to be, we could make it the null, but I'm going to actually just make it the equivalent control. So it's going to be that control. So right now it's fixing the position to it. Which means I think if I were to if I try and move this right now, I can't. It's locked onto it. It's clamped. But I'm going to say that it is not going to be locked to the origin. First of all, we got origin, axis, plane, and plane might actually be the one that we want. It's going to be locked to the plane, and it's the XY plane, which means, oh, that's not, is it the, no, it's not the XY, it's the XZ plane. Okay, the XZ plane. So what I think that means is, yeah, now you see if I try and move it up and down, it does not let me, it's locked. But if I move it left and right, I can, because that's not the plane that it's locked on. So what this means is if I were to grab this top lip and move it up and down, you'll see that's moving the bottom one up and down the equivalent amount. If I move left and right, it doesn't move it, but up and down, it does. So this is kind of skipping a bunch of espresso if we can get this working. Now, here's the tricky part. We want it to push it down, but not pull it back up again. So let's see if we can do that. Right now, we have a fixed position, but I'm going to say that what I actually want to do is set the minimum with it. So what this means, hopefully, is if I pull my lip up, nope, that's still following, so maybe we need max. If I pull my lip up, yeah, so I set to max. If I pull the lip up, you see it's going up independently. But if I push it down, you see the bottom lip is moving with it. But now I can freely go up again. So I was able to push it down with one, and it's free to move up on the other. So that actually worked great. I'm quite pleased with that. So we're free to grab this one and move it up and down. It just can't go above the other one. So it's kind of a really fun way of closing the mouth up on the other shape without overshooting it. Okay, so having done that, why don't we go ahead and do the equivalent on the other lip. I think it's pretty safe to just copy this tag over. And now I'm going to set it, I think the opposite is going to be the minimum of lip 5. So visually, we should have seen nothing happen. But, okay, well, something did happen. It went down. Okay, they are locked together. Something's breaking. So maybe this does still need to be max. I'm not sure. And let's see. Let's go ahead and see if I can move this up. Okay, I can move it up. This is where we might need the espresso. So, yeah, now you can, okay, so that pushes that one up. And, yeah, with that one pushing that one up, then that kind of stops that limitation. But if we grab this one and pull it down, it goes bonk, and it can't get below that one. I think it's because of the order of operations on these two things. So we've now hit the limitation of what the constraints could do, where it had to lock that way. Now we could try setting this to XZ minus. I honestly don't yet. See, it's now locking the opposite direction. If we set that to min, I think that we end up getting, yeah, I can move up, and then this can move down. But this one, if we move it down, it can't go beyond that. And the whole point here is that's supposed to be able to push it down below it. So that is, the constraints were working well for a little bit. So like the top lip could be like the master one. It controls whatever the bottom lip does. But but we've now hit the limitations there. And yeah, we are trying to keep this very clean, low poly, so we can keep it simple and keep moving forward, because it would take way too long to keep going here. And also throwing it out there that it would be really simple for us to go and take our this lip, and I'm going to throw that into a subdivision surface, and we grab this bottom one and throw that one into a subdivision surface. And now we get some curves back in if you were worried about the shape of the mouth there. But not what we are addressing in this one. So, but now you can see I pull this up and and you know, we've got some problems where you can see it's affecting the end tips here and whatnot. But those would be solved if we had a more complete head and a more complete rig. We're looking at the technical aspects of controlling this part of the mouth. So these constraint tags are working well, but we've now hit the limitation where they can't go beyond that point. So we have to delete them. They don't do us any more good. Now, what I need to do is right click on our lip 5, and we're going to create a Cinema 4D espresso tag. So it creates the espresso tag, automatically pops open the window for us. And I guess I don't want to maximize because we want to drag some objects in. So our key objects here are going to be lip 5 and lip 5. Now it would be a good idea to rename these. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to put a T at the end. So it's top, you know, and that's a way of distinguishing. Otherwise, in the espresso, we're going to get lost as to what's controlling what. So now we got lip 5 and then top lip 5. Now, something I do if we're going to be making complex espresso rigs, and I don't think this one's going to be overly complicated, but when I like to keep things a little bit organized in espresso. So something I tend to do is when I have a node in here that's an object represented in the object manager, I set it as a color, and typically my color for that is green. So these green ones now represent objects that are in the object manager. And tags I tend to make like purple. It's just arbitrary color scheme, but I keep that consistent. So what do we want? Well, I want, let's just say we could do local coordinates, and actually local is probably the way to go, actually, now I think about it. So if I were to make click on the output of our top lip, and I want to output the coordinate position Y. So we're outputting the position Y. And what that is going to do is we're outputting the position Y, and now on this lip, I want to input the position Y. So position Y. Now, if I were to feed this one into that one, they just become linked directly. They both have the same relationship to their parent null, so this rig works. So let's go ahead and okay, so we need to clamp it. So sorry, a little scattered here. I keep checking the chat to make sure things are working. New node. I'm going to right click, new node, espresso, calculate clamp. So what we're going to do is feed in the value of Y, and we're going to say that, let's see, let me get the math in my head. We're going to not clamp the max, but we are going to clamp the min. The min is actually going to be the same amount as the Y. And then the max, we just go into the parameter and make it so big that we never actually hit that number. So we have a range from anywhere of the current Y position to the maximum value. And I just realized that's the opposite. We want the max. We're controlling the max and putting a negative min. So what this is saying is that the lip 5, or this, honestly, I'm a little turned around in there. It's something I tend to just test and see what happens. So I'm feeding in the top lip, and it's affecting the bottom lip, and I'm not entirely sure which one is controlling. Oh yeah, I just got a reminder that we are making an eye rig and not a lip rig. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It's the same difference. So yeah, this is an eye rig. But yeah, I started completely, because I made a mouth rig in the past, I started completely thinking about that. Anyway, sorry for the confusion where I suddenly shifted anatomy on here. Okay, anyway, I'm not sure what I just did with espresso. So let's go ahead and move this down. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, something important to note is, remember how we flipped the whole thing 180? So now as I move this up and down, it's making its counterpart do the opposite. So we need to fix that. So all we have to do is invert it. So all I'm going to do is right click, make a new calculate math node. So now we're going to feed in whatever the result of this clamp is, and we're going to multiply it by a -1. So now that should output the opposite. Boop. Cool. So now let's see what we get. Now we still seem like we are pretty clamped on there. I'm gonna put that to 0. You gotta give me a sec. I just got, okay. Clamped to 0. Do we need the min? I'm gonna have to tinker around a little bit here because I got the numbers all turned around in my head. Oh, we don't want to clamp. Clamp is what the constraint was doing. So apologies when we start getting to these technical things. Sorry, a little disjointed in this one. What we're trying to do is make it equal the exact amount of the other one, but only under certain conditions. So if I were to feed this through directly, now this clamp is doing nothing, and we're just inverting that amount. So if I move this up, the other one moves up the equivalent amount because it's flipped around. So you'll see that that is working like they're clamped together. That's cool. But there is a setting that you might not know about in Espresso nodes, and that is on the input, we have something called on. So you can click on this on, and this is a condition. And what that condition is saying is when this condition is met, when something is feeding in here and says true, do this stuff. But if it's not true, then ignore this node. Don't do anything with it. So what we need to do now is make a duplicate of our bottom lip node. And I'm going to put it below just because visually that lid, we'll do lip. I'm going to continue to interchangeably use lip and eyelid here. So we're going to steal the Y position from the bottom lip, and we've got the Y position on the top one. We don't need these inputs anymore. So what are we going to do with these? Well, we're going to compare these. So I'm going to make a right-click Espresso logic compare node. So we're going to compare these two values. So I'm going to put in the top lip first, and then the bottom lip in the bottom. And then we're outputting this function. And we're going to be outputting, this node outputs true or false. Is the condition true or false? So we're going to say if the top lip is smaller than or equal to the bottom lip, make the bottom lip equal the Y position, the inverted Y position. So we'll get rid of this clamp because I don't think we need it. And this is a nice simple setup. And we've now got a condition here. So this only runs at certain times. So my hope here is as I move this up, that bottom lip is not affected. But as I move it down, it is affected. Yeah, so that went down to 0. Now what's interesting is it's springing back up. Oh, okay, that makes sense. We need to invert the, okay, it was partially working, but we also need to invert this. This is all happening because we flipped this upside down 180, so we have to compensate a little bit. So I'm going to throw that into the invert multiply, or do we input that into the Y? Yeah, we don't need a second one of these. We just have to make this multiply also feed into there, I think. So no way to know for sure, except if we move this up and down. So if I move this up, no, it gets left behind. So we've got the opposite going. So let's go ahead and invert this. So if this is greater than, yeah, so I can move up. And now if I move down, yes, okay. I do tend to do a lot of guess and checking on these things where I am not 100% sure the way it's supposed to be working. And I just try a couple ways because I know the logic, but I'm just not sure it should be greater. And especially with us inverting this Y position, it's like, is it supposed to be greater? Is it supposed to be less than? I know it's one of them. So in this current thing, the inverted Y, if it's greater than or equal to the bottom lip, then it's a true condition, and thus set the Y position of the bottom lip to whatever the current position of the top lip or lid is. Okay, having done all that, let's go ahead and you can see this bottom one cannot get above the top. And now the top one can go up, but if it go down, it can push the bottom one down. But now we're already able to do that with the clamp really easily. But now we can go and do the more advanced part of this, which is the opposite. And I think we can just copy this rig. So I'm going to copy and paste all these nodes, and we just kind of need to invert it. So instead of controlling the bottom lip, we're going to swap this out for the top lip. And I can actually just drag the top lip on and drop it on that node, and it will replace it as long as they have all the same parameters. And we need to also invert this bottom, and we need to invert the top. So essentially I just flipped the top lid and the bottom lid to the opposites. Now, we might need to flip this around. In fact, I almost guarantee we have to flip it around. So we're going to start it out with flipping it around. So let's go ahead and invert it. So it's less than or equal to now. And something popped, which makes me worried that we did something wrong. Okay. Maybe we did do something wrong. Let's put it back to the greater than. Okay, I can now freely go down, but it's not pushing the top one up. And the top one, I can freely move up, and it still pushes down. So nothing has changed. Greater than. Greater than or equal to. Okay, that condition is met, but if it ever tries to go above it, it is stopping it. So how do you push something down? Think. What do we do now? That condition is met, all these are going, but that Y will automatically go above it. I just realized it was inevitable that we got here, but this condition is totally true, and this condition I believe is true, but when one clamps the other one, it can never go past it. So this one, the very nature of what makes this top one make it so the bottom one moves, makes it so that this bottom one can't go beyond the top one in order to make it move. Okay, so what this means is we need an additional condition. And what that condition is going to be, and I love doing this, it's really fun, we're going to use a history node. And let me go ahead and explain what this does. We are going to create an Espresso general, actually, is it called history node? I always mix it up because it's a memory node that has a history setting. It really should be a little more consistent there in my opinion. But let's go ahead and just temporarily disable these bottom ones. I'm going to select them and click this enable, and they'll turn a little bit more gray. So what are we doing here? I am going to feed in the Y position into the input. And now we have a memory node, and the memory node will automatically remember 1 frame ago what this looked like. So in order to do that, we have to give it a history level of 1. But you see, I can't tick it up because it has to be history level. The history depth has to be 2, and now we can do a history level of 1. It's just the thing you got to do. So this memory node is now remembering exactly what the position was 1 refresh ago. So it is now outputting the 1 refresh ago. So now we can do another compare. So if we feed this through, I'm going to compare where the Y position used to be to where the Y position currently is. So now it is outputting this. And now if the Y position is, I'm going to flip these around. I want that to be on the top and this to be on the bottom. And I just like these being a little more organized, so I'll move that down. So if the current Y position is, and what do we want it to be? I think less than. If it is less than or equal to, oh wait, we're inverting. Oh, dang it, we always got to remember the inversion. This inversion makes it so that it's just going to be a lot more guess and checks everywhere because it just makes it, it's one variable too many for my brain to hold. So we've inverted it. But now we're saying when the Y position has moved, and in fact, why don't I, these are the kind of things where it needs a really proper plan tutorial, because while we can figure this out live, I'm having to go forward and backtrack so many times I feel like I might lose people. But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and make a text object, and I'm going to feed this text object. I'm going to output into its text field. I'm going to now output this compare node, okay? So it's currently saying false. Now what I hope the rig is doing is when I move this top lip, okay, it's actually true. So let's see what happens when I move it. You see, when I'm moving it, it says false. Oh, wait, no. And I'm going up higher. Oh, yeah, when I'm moving up higher, it says false. When I'm moving, if I'm not moving or moving down, it says true. So we are now getting a condition. So when this, so I actually want the opposite. So when it's less than or equal to. So now when I move it up, wait, move it down, false. Was that correct? Move it down, it says true. Move it up, it says false. Okay, cool. So now we have a thing that when this moves up, it says false. When I move down, it says true. That's all that this is doing, this memory node. But what's cool about that is we can now make this an additional condition on our on. So we can say when this condition is true and this condition is true. So we right click, new node. Which one is it? Compare condition. We need an or. Oh, bool. So we need a bool. So I'm going to right click and go to Espresso bool. And then we're going to feed in both conditions. So both of those conditions. And then we output that. And I'm also going to output that temporarily into the text here. So all this is saying is if the Y lip gets lower than that one and it's moving downward, then it should move it down. So now if it's moving downward. Now, that's all well and good. So that means, okay, that one cannot go above. But this condition is currently not true. That one's not moving. So let's go ahead and delete all of these nodes and copy and paste this entire rig. Copy and paste. I'm a little worried we're going to hit the same dead end here, but for a different reason. I'm going to delete the text, so now we're seeing the result of this other one. We have to invert everything again, so put that on the bottom lip, put this on the top lip. So those have been flipped around. Okay, this bottom one is still able to freely move around, which is a good sign. And it hits the top and it stops dead. The top one can move up and down, and it's freely pushing the bottom one down. Okay, so, oh man, this is tricky logic. They're flipped around, bottom one. Oh man, this is... Sorry, everybody. I thought I had it, and now it's proving a little trickier. The logic is here. The condition's being met, so essentially we're doing like full-on, like, kind of conditional programming here, which is cool, but the top lip... The bottom lip should be getting output. The top lip should be moving on Y. You know what? Let's just let's disable these top ones and just deal with the bottom one in isolation. That'll help because I'm a little turned around there. Oh, okay. Well, actually, it's already like conceptually what we did was correct. You see, when I move this up, it will move the top one up. But when they're both turned on, it's not working because the top one is preventing it. Now, while we did do the condition where it's like, oh, if it's moving, it won't. It can stop it. We need some sort of additional condition. So this is pure logic that we're dealing with here. So now we know when the top one is moving. Now, when I hit this and it's moving up, it will be moving. So we can't count on that. So this one should be, this bottom one can move when the bottom lip is greater than, I mean, that's all working correctly. But that means the top one should get unlocked. And right now it would start moving, or and not that one. that's a shot in the dark, but I'm willing to give it a try. So this is outputting all the proper conditions. But what I'm thinking is we need a second bool, and this is where these things get insane. But we'd be feeding this bool in as well, and this one. But we need the inverse of that one. So if we go to the espresso bool not, we can now take this true statement and invert it to a false, and the false will be inverted to a true. And then we take that and we output that into the condition of the bottom lip. So there's now 3 conditions on that one. Actually, we could have put a third condition in here. I always forget you can put more conditions as long as they're all the same, but it's all broken apart now. Now, if this was working, it won't work in the bottom lip. It'll work on the top one. Nope, that still stops it dead. If one moves, the other moves. Oh, I just had an idea, maybe, perhaps, where this is all working well, but we kind of need a meta level of this. So I'm going to delete this entire thing. So this is all this one espresso tag, which is fair. But if we duplicate the espresso tag, and now it's on this object, and we do the inversion on this one. So if it was bottom, it becomes top. If it was top, it becomes bottom. And that should all be working fine. So now we got 2 different espresso nodes, and now this one cannot go, well, yeah, this one can't go above the bottom, and this one cannot go above, well, that one can push up the top, but I think it's because it's calculating after. It's probably, yeah, actually that'd be interesting. I want to see if that's actually the case. You can see, and I want to display this, this bottom one can't push the bottom one down. And it can't do it because I think this bottom one calculates afterward. And you can see this bottom one can push the top one up. But if we were to take the top one and tell its order of operations to go 1 refresh later, then I think the bottom one can push the bottom one down. The top one can push the bottom down. And now the top one can't push the top one up because of that kind of priority. But here's where things might get interesting if we get this working. We put them back to being the same priority. And what we're going to do, which is kind of crazy, is we now have a condition if this is true. So I'm going to say, let me make sure I'm on the correct one. When I'm on the top espresso node, which is controlling the top lip, when, oh, is it the inverse of it? It's got to be the inverse of it. I'm actually going to drag in the other espresso node itself. So now we've got an espresso node in an espresso setup, which is crazy, but I've done it before. And let's go ahead and make it a nice kind of purpley pink so it stands out as a tag. And we're going to control its enable. So this espresso tag is only on if a certain condition is met. So I'm going to say it's only on when this compare is on. Now we might need the opposite. I'm not sure. But let's see. I'm going to go ahead and push that down. Still can't get past it. So let's see if we need the opposite. Tricky aim here. Okay, now let's see. Push it down. Oh, still can't get past it. Unless it's supposed to flip these around. Bum, bum, bum. Bump, bump, bum. Okay, the espresso should turn. Okay, well, let's see the condition. Let's slow down here. Slow down. Check our logic. I'm going to get the text again, and let's see. I want the object property of text, and I want just a straight up output here. Cool. So this is controlling the top lip, which means it's almost like this espresso node should be controlling itself. It seems odd for an espresso node to control itself. Not only is it odd, it's impossible, because once it turned itself off, it couldn't turn itself back on again. But anyway, if I move this up, it's true. If I move it down, oh yeah, we're controlling, this is the bottom lip. Yeah, okay, that's the bottom lip. So I'm saying when the top lip is controlled, when the bottom lip is moving up and down. Oh my God, I keep getting so many spam calls. It's crazy. I've gotten like 6 of them since we started this live stream. And I want to rapid fire these guys, seriously. Maybe we'll go long today. When this is moving up, the top espresso is on. When it's moving down, it's off. So we've already inverted it. So if we put that through, we'll now see the inversion. So I'm moving up. The top espresso tag is off. But I actually want... How do we do this? It's all right there. It's so close. Move this up and down. What's funny is there's probably some incredibly simple way here that I am not thinking. I mean, the cool thing I wanted to show you guys was this conditional on thing, so we can feed it conditions. So when this is moving, the top. Okay. The bottom lip is moving, but the bottom lip is the control zone over here, which means this is only moving up when this is true. Now, for that to move, for this to go above it, that was already not the problem because this bottom one calculates later. So we really need this to be happening on the opposite one in order for it to work. So we're going to do that. I'm going to delete those nodes, Control X, in fact, double click on the other tag, paste it, and now we can link these in. So we're going to put the knot in there, and we're in the bottom espresso tag now, so I'm going to flip that to the other one. So what this means is this bottom one, when I move it down, this one's got nothing to do with it because it's being controlled by the bottom espresso tag. The bottom espresso tag is when the top lip is moving. When the top lip is moving, the bottom turns off. It's more fun with the mouth because you can make it talk. Oh, we're so close. We're so close to the logic here. If it moves up, it can't simultaneously. One can't move the other because the other's turned on, and it simultaneously clamps it. But if it's higher than it, if it's higher than it, oh goodness, what do we do? So that works up there. But we need, and then so the bottom one's calculations, which is the bottom lip is being controlled by that one. The bottom lip is fine. That one is properly moving the top. But the top is moving by the top one, which means this is the good espresso tag. This is the one that's working. This bottom one is not the one that's working. So this bottom one is the one that needs to turn off. This bottom one needs to turn off when the top is moving, which kind of means there's more of the setup we were on before. Easy to link up, rink, and now this bottom one should turn off when this condition is happening, because that's the one that locks us. Well, okay, that's actually sort of working because you can see that that can now freely escape below it, but this bottom espresso tag is now, yeah, it just turned everything off, so that's not good. Yeah, that pushes it up, which is fine, but then the top one goes down, thus disabling. No, now re-enabled it. Oh, I would love to figure this one out all the way, but I feel like at this point it's not very interesting just to be hitting this roadblock again and again. I have, and I don't have them handy on me, but I've got entire huge rigs that are built around this concept where if one thing is being the one being controlled, it automatically will disable other things. You can have these multiple things moving on top of each other. It was also in my head that we might be able to do, I mean, the clamping stuff was working okay, but it had the same kind of order of operations problem. And then after that, I mean, well, after that, you could do like a dynamic rig, but that I really don't think that's a good way to pursue. They'd have a dynamics rig, and a dynamics rig can only calculate when you're hitting play. So obviously that couldn't work. Let's see, in the chat, Jake is saying Espresso needs a library of presets. I think it kind of does a little bit. They've got these system presets in here, and you can see they've got a bunch of like logic things, so the calculations, animation time. There's not like a million of them, but there's a decent number of them. Yeah, you can check object if something's the same object, and I think that these might not even be presets. They might be code. Yeah, these are code. So it's like some bonus Espresso nodes, which is pretty useful. So I don't know why they call it a preset when it's actually it's actually code. Yeah, look at all that code. But yeah, those are interesting. And then the operators are obviously the entire collection. And then I almost feel like there was a place to get other collections. I'd never used them, which is why I don't even know what's in there. But yeah, those are interesting. There was a time where we were working on some logic nodes, like some AI logic-y nodes, but we never into pursuing those properly. Those were from the old car races. I'm just seeing if my brain catches on to anything again. Everybody in the chat, start getting new links together in case we got to just jump on and do a new question. I'm thinking that's probably the case. I do like some of the stuff we did here, but it needs to be able to move. If it's equal to or move, then can't move because it's constantly saying go lower than it. I mean, there might be some sort of threshold we could do. I don't know. I really don't know. 4 Lives is saying that we were doing too much math. We might as well be using Houdini at that point. I mean, with some of the way the logic was going, like I see what you're saying. Like once you go pretty deep on here, it's like, well, okay, this is no longer simple. And the whole trick with Houdini is it can do anything. It's just incredibly complicated to get there. So if you're already going complicated, then there's a fair argument to make for that. Oh man, we're pretty close there. We're able to get one to move. I mean, we've kind of moved away from it already, and I don't know if this would work, but we could go and put those constraints on there and then just do this memory node thing. So Espresso could turn on and off the different constraints depending on which object was moving. But then the problem happens is if one object starts moving, it turns itself back on again. So that's where I'm getting a little bit stumped. So that stuff gets tricky there right away. Now I think we had a link further back in the chat. Let's see. Jake linked to the old mouth rig I had animated, which was definitely fun. I mean, what's funny is this was supposed to be an eye rig, and there's a very good reason to not have the eye rig like overlap. Although, I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't feel like that was saving almost any time, but it is cool to add features into rigs that make it more advanced. But it goes to a lot of stuff, like when you're animating something, especially if you're animating it manually, that you want to have control there. You want it to be able to overlap and shoot past it and pull a little bit forward, like this. This we could pull forward and actually have it pull up and overlap, like. And the Maya rig we saw, it might not be able to do that. Maybe it can. I don't know, but you'd want the control to be able to go a little bit crazier and a little bit more advanced. And that just doesn't seem to be the case there. I'm scrolling back up through to see if we can find some of the other questions. So let's see. Oh, okay. Yadaglow posted this saying that somebody was trying to post this on the Facebook chat and it seemed to not be making it through. So let's see what we got. Well, this is the CG Bros. Watch this beautiful. Did they make it, or are they just? Well, CG Bros I think is some sort of aggregate site, so it seems that this is from Camille or Camille. I'm not sure how you I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Chayx, Hugo, Jean, Juliet, Jordan, Marie, Piler, Kevin, Roger. So a lot of different things. The unfortunate part here is I'm not sure what the question is unless it's just this big falling and clumping of snow. I guess presumably it is this falling and clumping of snow. Now the problem with this, the sort of problem with this is there is, as far as I know right now in Cinema 4D, there is literally only one answer to that, and that is X Particles. And X Particles was doing all sorts of cool new stuff with snow. And why don't we even just go X Particles snow clumping? And the trick here is this existing yet? Yeah, you can see, boom, X Particles, literally exactly what you're asking about. So, okay, it looks like this is some sort of X Particles fluid something or other. And I am simply not an expert on that. So I'm going to tinker with it until somebody puts a new question here in the chat. But we need some more inspirational things in there. But let's see if we can do something with it. And keep in mind, I'm going to be doing this completely blind. I have not attempted to do anything even similar to this in X Particles ever. So we're going to start out with a XP emitter. And we're going to make it a defined emission. And the defined emission is going to be a 3D grid. And let's go ahead and set this to, I don't know, 22 by 22 by 22. And we'll move these all a lot closer to each other. So you can see we get this nice kind of clump there. So what this should do is we can emit a, I guess it just does it the one time. So it's just going to go, boom, and then particles are created. So I'm going to give them a speed of 0. And we hit play, and it should just create a clump of particles that are just sitting there. Now, I don't want to see this initial box, so how do we hide it? Display. Draw emitter. Okay, turn off draw emitter. And now we should just go bloop, and we get a big grid of particles. So that's a nice, easy way of getting that. So having done that, why don't we go ahead and create a floor. And we will add an X particle collider. So X particle collider tag, cool. And then we make a gravity. So we will make a X particle modifier motion gravity. And now we should be able to play, and then boom, particles fall on the ground. Okay, fun. Now we need to make the particles more visible for you guys. So they will not be dots, they will be boxes. Thump. Okay, cool. So now we need to get these to all start linking to each other somehow, which I'm assuming is going to be, oh man, because they got a series of different dynamic systems now. So we got the domain, we got flow fields, we got fluid FX, fluid PBD. Like I'm a little. It could be constraints for all I know. I'm going to there's forces, viscosity, but surface tension. None of these settings are screaming at me that we're going to get really nice clumping. I mean, we can do connections, and then I think, how do we break connections, collisions, surface tension? Somebody's saying the grain solver in fluids. Let's see what that is. The grain solver in fluids. So I'm going to assume it's fluid FX. I don't see a grain solver in here. Maybe it's not fluid FX. Fluid field, fluid PBD. Yada-da, yada-da, yada-da. Like I said, too many. They got all these really cool systems, but I'm not inherently familiar with them. should be. I want to be. Foam. Now I'm getting all sorts of different explanations from different people. So I've gotten shout outs in the chat from Grain Solver and Fluids, Constraints, PBD, and XP Domain. That is literally all of them. Oh yeah, and that's Zalam is mentioning that they have the link in the community page. So they got the content repository, and yeah, let's see if that is available. We pop it open, dissect it a little bit, and you guys should always go here and check out what they create, because they've got a huge collection of things here. Okay, well, they just straight up have the Cinema 4D file. So first of all, we'll remember to put this link into the chat. But it's really cool they started putting this together. So yeah, if you don't know how to do it, and the best way to learn, for me, the best way to learn is reverse engineering. Oh, I need to extract it. Or is it going to open? Okay, cool. It opened. Okay, it seems to be playing fast enough. So we hit play, and boom. Okay, that seems to be working fine. So what do we got here? The camera seems to be locked, which is interesting. Parallel perspective view. Where's the camera? Free me from this camera. Okay, so yeah, okay, they got one boom burst of emission there doing its own thing. Cool. And then a second one, presumably with some different settings. That one's falling apart more. And then I'm assuming we're going to see a third one with even more different settings. But let's see what we're dealing with here. First of all, it looks like their generator is using a mesher of some sort. So if I render If I hit render, we are seeing literally nothing, unless this is supposed to be rendering in cycles, and it is in cycles, but I have cycles. So I don't know why we're not seeing something there. But we are getting the effect. So I would like to recreate this with the most minimal. So they are using an XP fluid. Gravity. All right, well, let's, I want to do a minimal results kind of thing here. So that was an XP fluid, so let's just see what we get. Dynamics. Wait, did that say XP fluid? There is no XP fluid. Fluid FX. Derp. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so we got Fluid FX. So we did have this one open earlier. And presumably there's more settings to it than this. But if we hit play, oh wow, okay, that was cool and quick right away. Let's see what settings we've got here. Accurate collision, friction, check density. I mean, it's pretty cool. Check density. I don't know what check density is going to do. Ooh, neat. There's not very many settings here. Velocity control, accurate collisions, friction iterations. Initial pressure. External pressure. This is pretty interesting. Blurb. Oh man, X particle is so nice. Blurb. Still very fluidy. Let's make it a crazy amount of friction here. Still really fluidy. I mean, I don't know if, yeah, I mean, it's still fluid, so that's not necessarily anything. Let's see what happens if we put an extra. Nope, it caps out at about 10,000. We could say custom is going to unlock these, but I don't, compression limit. I don't know if any of these settings. Okay, well, I was hoping we could just pop this open and see additional things, but it's not single-handedly. Well, they have it set to custom and all these things. What I'm curious about is how much work is this thing doing? Oh, yeah, this mesher wasn't even turned on, which is weird. I guess I'd want you to turn that on to see it. We've also got 3 emitters, so we'll just do the middle emitter so it runs quicker. And is it merely this fluid effects that's doing everything. If we turn that off, what do we get? A bunch of particles that blob and start sliding on this collision of a floor. Accurate collisions. Oh, all really straightforward. Okay, I'm going to be really impressed if it's just a particular series of settings inside of that, because I don't see any other anythings here. So let's find out. I copied the settings, and we're going to paste the identical settings. Let's see. No, it's not clumping. It is not clumping. Somebody's saying to turn off the XP domain. Oh, we do have an XP domain in there. I didn't know. Okay, so interesting. Are we getting clumping? Blurb. I wouldn't say that's clumping. They all seem pretty independent to me. Do. No interactions. Well, I mean, this is a little in the weeds as far as you guys seeing my thought process as to how I go back and forth. I like a minimal information setup where I want to know as little as possible to start playing, and I just go and get my hands dirty. Oh, look at that. Extended data, granular. So they have physical data, but they also turn on fluid data, and they have some density and stability and cohesion. That might be the missing property here. Let's try that out. Emitter, fluid data, granular. Not terribly visually different, but let's go ahead and get rid of the bounce. Lots of friction, first of all. Blurb. Okay, kind of oozy. I am intrigued by these settings. Now I'm going to pop, or let's not do that. Let's pop out those settings so we can tinker with them. So we got stability, cohesion. Okay, we're going to crank up the cohesion crazy high and the stability crazy high. So let's see what that does. Boom. Okay, it's not terribly cohesive as far as I could tell there. Lots of friction. And then maybe there's some sort of radius. It did seem like, well, no, our radius is reasonably sized. Okay. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, well, it wasn't what I wanted to have happen, but look at that. We had something interesting happening. I increased the radius of our particles, and the radius of the particles got big enough. That's actually pretty fun. The radius of our particles got big enough where they were colliding with each other. And because they're colliding with each other, they suddenly exploded. I think anything below 5, we shouldn't explode, or we should be barely exploding. So, but the cool part with that is when they started exploding, we were definitively seeing these chunks. So that's already a cool little liquidy explosion. Blurm! Because that's running pretty quick, we want to visualize this better than just a particle. So why don't we go ahead and make a XP Skinner, and we will be sure to feed in our emitter. And let's go a frame forward and get a reasonable setting here. 5. No, that's taking. We got to crank that up higher. We don't have enough time to wait for that too long. Bloop. Maybe we can pull the scale down. Shablooms. And it's very, because we got a perfect grid, I would expect this to be almost perfectly symmetrical. And it is actually, to a gorgeous degree, being very symmetrical. So that right away by itself is pretty cool. Okay, nice. So now we're getting somewhere. Now we got some things we need to play with. So we've got our density, we've got our viscosity. None of these settings mean anything to me right now. Like I don't have a relative scale in my head. So, like viscosity, I don't know what that like. I don't know what is a good number for that and what's a bad number. Like this is 30, this one's 1,000. Like is that how many particles are being contained inside of some of these blobs? I am not sure. Let's find out. Let's drop it really low. Not that low. Are we going to see smaller blobs? No, doesn't look smaller. So let's go the opposite. Let's go 10 times higher than it was before. Visually, still no difference. So as far as I can tell, that doesn't do anything. Viscosity, let's crank that up crazy high. Okay. Oh, nice. Okay, so now there's obviously a coherence to it. So now you see they're stuck together really, except for those corner ones that love to explode, to escape. This viscosity is holding it together. And look at this nice slow melt. That's really cool. I'm going to have to spend more time with that. Look at these funky patterns. Now all this is happening because we're still colliding with our radius here. So I'm going to shrink that up again. Blurp. Okay, now they're going to be happier and not explode so much. Blurp. Those corners escape. Friction. Let's just try cranking that up. We'll see what that does. Bonk. Okay, seemed to hold its shape a little bit better. Now we drop it really low and do the same test. And this, honestly, this is the way I start learning things is we go and we start clicking through and doing just a series of tests. Like by doing really low friction, you see it blob down more. By going really high friction, and let's see if we can go higher. Okay, we can go higher, so I'm going to go like 1,000 here. So you got a very high friction. Definitely seems to slow it down a little bit. But now it falls and hits, and it actually did a pretty reasonable job of maintaining its basic shape, even though it did splat out quite a bit. But that's not horrible. Cohesion. Okay, so that was friction. So let's go to a reasonably high friction. We'll do like 200%. We're going to put the viscosity back to default as we're testing settings. So cohesion, let's go pretty low, pretty dang low on the cohesion. And let's see if it breaks apart. Now it's blobbing apart, but it's not breaking apart. So if we put cohesion, can that go above 100? No, that is stuck at 100. So we can do a cohesion of 100. Blurp. Oh, okay. So strong cohesion is going a really long way to keeping these stuck together. Now, something I'd be curious about is if we could chop this in half or kind of break it somehow. So let's give it a shape here so we actually have something to hit. So I'll do 45 degrees. And let's lower it down. Move world axis, pull this down. And there we go. Just got a little slice there. Let's make that collidable as well. Let's make our blob a color so we can see it a little bit better. Okay. And let's turn on SSAO just because it looks cool and it almost takes no time to calculate. Alrighty. So let's see. We make our blob and it's going to fall and it's super cohesive, but now it's hitting that. And actually you can see it's cutting it, but it did manage to hold on to itself. Blurb. This is cool. I like it. And now I feel like we're in a slightly better testing bed. Like, let's get rid of some of this stability. I don't imagine stability would visually have too much of an effect. Oh, actually, that does. That's a little more clumpy if I had to put a word on it. Blah. That's cool. I like it. Now, I mean, I guess the tricky bit here is this is fun to play with, and I wouldn't mind live streaming this kind of thing. But this is essentially the answer to your question is go download that xparticles file and start reverse engineering it and figuring out what they did with it, or actually, you know what? I'm going to take it back. I have one additional thing that we could do to tinker along these lines, because that thing is cool. But, well, if you don't have xparticles, well, here's something I was planning on making a full tutorial about, and I'm sure I still will. But let's go and look at potentially another kind of setup that might be cool. We're going to make a floor. We're going to make it dynamic, and we're going to make a cloner. And we're going to fill the cloner with low poly spheres. In fact, I want this to run fast, so we're going to make this as low poly as possible. And the way the lowest poly you can possibly go is making a cube with only a single fillet subdivision and delete the tag. And now you can see we've got the blockiest possible spheres imaginable, but they're still very spherical. Cool. I'm going to make another grid. So let's make a grid array. Let's go ahead and set that to something reasonable, 15 by 15 by 15, hopefully. Render instance, I think, should maintain it. I don't want to shrink it too much because dynamics can get funky if we shrink too much, so we'll do that to an extent, and now we will just scale our cloner. A little twitchy there. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to copy that number to X, Y, and Z. Big old grid of these. This might be too many. I almost guarantee it's too many, but we'll find out. I'm going to right-click on the cube, and I'm going to apply another rigid body. And let's hit 1 frame forward, 2 frames forward. Okay, it's refreshing reasonably well. Actually, that's not bad at all. I mean, once I start colliding, it's going to slow down. So that's all fair. It's a few too many, so I'm going to change this to per step. And now if I go tick, 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 down, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It maintained the percentage, and only by taking those down like 3 each, there is so many less than there had been. So look how much quicker that was already calculating just by dropping a few. So all we did was make a kind of a big pile of spheres here, and you see they're all going to fall, and that's fine. But there is a tool in Cinema that's been here forever that I just never played with, and I'm sad I never did. And it is under the Simulate menu. There is something called Force, and a force is kind of I guess the best way to think of it is a new type of particle effect. It's a new particle force, and it's just called force. So it's the force. And what the force does is it makes it so that every single dynamic object is either attracted to each other or repelled by each other based on a certain distance. So right now they are going to be, let's do a negative one. I'm going to say negative 100, and we'll leave it all default, and let's see what happens. I'm going to play forward 1 frame or 2 just to make sure. Okay, it is kind of insane. So maybe 100 is too much, but let's go ahead and go 1 frame. Okay, 2 frames. Actually, you see it is taking I don't want to hit play because you see it is taking a significant amount of time for those to calculate. But you can see that every single one of these is pushing against all of the others, and it's almost like we're getting this really nice little particle explosion, except this is just an emitter. So right away, that's pretty cool. We're going to play with this some more, but just because we need it to go faster, I'm going to drop these even more. Okay, at least we get reasonable playback now. It's not great. Okay, so that's force is negative, but let's go ahead and do a force positive and see what we get. So you can see how these are all getting sucked together. So now we've got a nice cohesion on these overall. Now, I guess there does end up being a little bit of some trouble. Well, first, how do we go about doing this? We don't have too many settings. We have the inverse square fall off, which is an inner distance and an outer distance. And how big are these? This is about 60 wide. And I think these are probably, I don't know if these are a radius. So we could say 60. But I'm going to say the outer radius is 100. Actually, it's 60, so let's go 122, which is big enough to be the same size twice. And I'm going to make the inner distance almost identical. So you see that we've got an inner distance of 120 and an outer distance of 122. Very similar to each other. But the point being is that they should be, if they're close to each other, they should be very strongly attracted to each other. But if they get just a little distance away, then that cohesion should get broken. So let's do a similar setup to what we had in the other one. Let's make a cube here. In fact, let's go and angle it in a slightly even more fun way. T for scale. I'm going to move it down in a uniform way. Right there. T for scale again. And we'll scoot this over so we get a nice little spike through the middle. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to steal the dynamics tag from the floor onto that cube. I'm going to move the cube as a child of the cube, or the cube as a child of the floor so we can just see it. And let's go ahead and grab our cluster and move it up into the air. And just so we can speed things up, I'm going to tell the dynamics to calculate at double the time scale so we don't have to wait that long. And you know what? We'll take it down one more time. Tick, tick, tick. And let's give it a quick save. Number 3 is dynamic clumping. See if that works. All right, so let's go ahead and hit play. And they all get sucked together, double the speed, and let's see what happens when they collide. So that is successfully breaking them apart. That's pretty interesting the way they are just are so smoothly sliding. I'm entertained by that. Okay, fine start. Might turn that off. Let's go to let's go to all of our objects, and I'm going to get rid of all the bounce and give it lots of friction. So 100% friction, tons of friction. Let's go ahead and hit play. And there we go. Okay, so it's doing a really good job of them all being clumped together. It appears that our Facebook stream has stopped, so we'll just have to keep going there. So now they're getting stuck to each other very strongly. We have some damping, which is going to suck the energy out, I guess. I'm going to decrease our radius by half and see if they're still attracted to each other. So we'll hit play, and hard to tell. I think they are. But now if they get pulled apart from each other just a little bit, they should shatter quite a bit. Yeah, I guess we still want some range on there. 80, I gotta do 80 and 90. This is gonna be tough. Where essentially it would be if it manages to break itself apart enough, the clumps should stay stuck to each other, but not like suck themselves back in again. And actually that worked pretty well, I gotta say. That's not bad. Let's go ahead and I mean I don't know, I haven't tinkered with this with the concept of doing like a snowball. So a couple things. I guess I kind of want to whip this at the floor a little bit more, like give it a little bit more speed. So I'm going to give it some custom initial velocity of -555 on Y. And I guess we can pull it up in there a little bit. Let's see how quickly it goes down. 1, 2. I guess it just gives a nice little burst initially. We'll go 3 times as fast. Go! So now it's whipping it down towards the floor. And then boom, hits it. So we get lots of them shattering out, unfortunately. But we get some decent clumping. So, yeah, tricky one. I mean, well, you can always also run the Voronoi fracture breaking functionality, which is also sort of fun. I wonder if that's something we could do. Although I don't want to give up on this quite yet. Well, I haven't given up at all, but I want to give this a more interesting shape to collide with. So why don't we go ahead and do something like this? I'm going to make a big old step, and we're going to put this into a cloner, and it's going to be set to linear. You know, I haven't just played with dynamics in a long time. This is fun. So we're going to make a bunch of clones like that, and we're going to offset here. There we go. So we're going to make some stairs, and then we can go bloop, bloop. So now we got a big old set of stairs. We will delete we're going to steal the dynamics from the floor and delete that. And let's go ahead and scoot this down. Thanks for the heads up on the live stream information. I'm going to move this here so that it is going to catch this very first step. And let's just see what happens. So this should be pretty easy collision stuff. So boom, explodes. They're still staying stuck together okay. You see distinct clumps, but they still individually are flying apart. So now, with a more interesting setup, now we can start doing things like cranking up our strength. So let's jump our strength up an order of magnitude from 10 to 100. And now you see it's okay. It's quite stuck, and these are trying to stick to each other quite a bit. Now that could be fine if we get the radius correct. So let's try like 60, 61. So they're really, really strongly attracted to each other, but as soon as they pull away just that little bit, it might be enough for them to explode. So what was our exact size of a cube again? What are we seeing there? Oh, I just changed the oh, that was a force. Let me move this down. We got one set, which is the stairs, and they both look identical hierarchy wise. Okay, sorry. Back to the force was fine. The size of this cube is 58. So honestly, like I would think that the 56 would be pretty dang good. So let's see. Bonk. Does that make them stick? Yes, that does make them stick. I'd say they're definitive, unless that's just pure friction. No, you can definitively see that be acting like it's stuck. So let's that worked well. Let's crank up its strength again. Although that's okay. Well, apparently, if we go up too high with the strength, it explodes them all outward. I'm going to try cranking up the damping and see if that can counter it. I don't necessarily expect it to. I also don't care about respecting mass. Apparently that does do something, though. Okay, well, a strength of 1,000, too much. It can't handle that. But like I like look at the way that's shearing off. That's pretty good. So I mean, okay, we're not going to go much further with that, with the way we're setting this up. Although I wouldn't mind trying this Voronoi fracture thing. But you see that we're actually kind of getting some clumping here in vanilla Cinema 4D, in just in R20 Studio, and we got something reasonably clumpy there just by using this force. Really small force, so they're only attracted to things that are really on top of them. And so, right away, that's pretty cool. And of course, if we were to grab some of the awesome new volume builder and volume mesher, let's go and put this entire cloner into the volume builder. And is that actually going to work? Let's grab the volume builder, make the size 5. Actually, now that I think about it, I've run into problems with this being able to calculate things. 10. Let's try making this a connect object. When in doubt, throw it into a connect. Yeah, I've had a lot of problems with volume builders getting confused by cloners. It might be because of these render instances. Yeah, it doesn't like the render instances. This connect object's probably not doing anything now. But anyway, we got our volume builder now. And let's see how high we can set it. Okay, 55 makes a big old blob. 33 is a more defined blob. That might be okay. We'd, of course, want to put a bunch of... Oh, and does fog do anything? Fog. I do tend to like fog. Especially because of the way you blur it. So if we smooth it, it blurs in a nicer, blobbier way. But how long does it take to calculate? Well, it doesn't seem horrible. So let's see. So boom. I mean, okay, it's, the blur is making it a little bit jumpy. So we would want to increase its resolution and not smooth it that much that way. So back to signed distance. We got that smoothing layer on top of that. I mean, the more we pull this in, the more it's going to be going nuts. And honestly, until we get to the layer where we're seeing each individual one, then it's not necessarily working great. But this, yeah, they disappear a little wonky with our volume mesher. But in addition to the volume mesher, if you wanted to, you could be feeding this into the metaballs or into the X particles generator skinner. So we could throw the cloner into the skinner. I think. Or does that need to be in the connect? I thought that could handle it. Our resolution might be wrong there, but if we turn on the connect object and feed the connect in. Yeah, so, well, it likes the connect version, or at least it seems to. I'm getting confused by the scanner, so we're going to ignore that. Yeah. But anyway, without going any further with that, although I will save that one with the forces, now we're going to save a different one, and we'll just wrap it up here, I think. Wrap this one up here. Maybe we'll take another question. What I would love to do is we've got this series of clones here, and if we make them very mathematically accurate, so let's go ahead and make them exactly 50, 50, 50, and now we make sure that the cloner is using a spacing of 50, 50, 50. Then all these edges should be perfectly touching each other. And then if we were to take this and create a MoGraph Voronoi fracture and put that in, and I think make that dynamic, put the dynamic tag on the Voronoi fracture. In fact, we'll do it from scratch. Right click and we'll say, because I don't know if it does any subsettings. I'm just going to say rigid body. So you'll see that it has taken it and broken it apart and in addition to its pieces. I'm going to get rid of the point generation. So now it's just acknowledging every clone as a separate object. So it's a Voronoi fracture that's not fracturing anything. But where this gets interesting is we can go and turn on create fixed connector, and we created this fixed connection, and it's automatically set with the proper kind of forces and torque, I believe, so that because these polygons were perfectly touching, it might actually do a reasonable job, although I'm not sure how fast our dynamics will run here. That these should all be stuck together. Yeah, they're all stuck together pretty well, but we have a braking force, and if it goes beyond that braking force, then certain sections should be able to break free and start falling away. So I'm curious, you can already see like those have split even though the top is together. So now as this starts tumbling down with any luck, we're going to need more frames. 999. So these should start falling apart as it takes more damage. What's interesting is essentially there's a fixed connection between every single one that was near each other. So it could actually start getting more and more floppy as it goes instead of them breaking apart in a very sort of rigid way. And this is just, it kind of broke enough where it just kind of blobbed down, but oh, the forces are still there too. Can't trust that. Okay, hang on, we got to redo it because the forces were also doing things. So boom. Okay, you can definitely. Okay, well, okay, way better. You see that boom, it broke, and now it should be able to fall down. And you can see how there's almost like these slice connections, and now it's going to fall down. And as it does these, each hit, you see boom, more break, and then boom, more break. So we were able to, in a very interesting, quick way, we were able to feed a simple cloner into a Voronoi fracture, and this fixed connector is automatically making a lot of connections between every single part. So that is pretty cool, and it's a nice way of breaking the things apart. And once again, we could take these and feed it through a volume mesher or a metaball and start getting different clumping. And then once they're fixed, I wonder if there's even be ways to add in variation, which would be pretty interesting, where like on frame 1, we need them all to be perfect here so that it knows how to link them together. But if we were to feed this this would be weird. I'm just curious. If I were to feed it a random effector, and I don't want position, but I do want lots of random scale, I'm going to say uniform scale, and I'm going to crank this up quite a bit. So you can see we'll get some big chunks and some small chunks. You get a little imperfection on there. But frame 1, it needs to all be together. So in frame 1, I'm going to, in fact, I'll even get a few frames. We're going to give it up until frame 2. It's still linked together. And then we're going to frame forward like 10 of them, 10 frames, and we're going to jump up the strength here. And I'm just curious if that, well, first of all, if that will even animate on. And if it does, will that break the clumps apart? Yeah, see, it pushed the fixed positions beyond where they could handle, and it just automatically broke them, is what I think happened there. But breaking force, I mean, if we were to start cranking this up like 10 times as strong a connection, is that enough to keep it bonded together? Well, apparently, yes. It's a bit of a mutant blob, and some of these shrunk really tiny. But let's see if when it falls down, if it's able to break. Somebody's asking in the chat what we're doing, and there's what are we doing? And so we started with snow clumps, now we're playing around. We're still making snow clumps. We're just doing it not with X particles because the X particles had too good of a solution. But yeah, it's still losing some particles, but they're still they're still stuck together. So doing the torque 10 times as much might have been too much, but now if I drop this down, that was too small. You see it immediately falls apart. So this is just going to turn into finding that balance. Yep, two immediately falls apart. I'm surprised that it was so kind of on the nose. Yeah, okay, now we just have like I'm kind of picturing it like a Cronenberg ball. It's kind of like this weird mutant thing that just wants to be put out of its poor misery. But it's pretty interesting how it's kind of like pulling apart and blobbing. It's kind of a sad collection. I'm sure you could make a really cool kind of daily render idea out of this, because you could potentially make each of these a different clone. So this could be like a pile of rubber ducks or something that are all stuck to each other, and you're like, no, I cannot break apart, as they try and just collapse and fall down the set of stairs, in individual clumps slowly breaking away. So pretty cool. Like, I like it. It's pretty funky. Boom. Okay, finally that big part broke apart. So yeah, it's neat. I like it, and we definitely have some sort of clumping going. If this was baked and running quicker, then I think that would probably be pretty visually interesting. Kill me. And then you could put, yeah, and I'm just curious. So we were able to make it scale a decent amount and then change the braking force, and we found a really interesting combination. So I'm actually quite a fan of what we're getting from here. And I even wonder if there would be a argument for a combination of this and the forces so that they'd be really sticking to each other as well along those lines. That's only if they really started falling down that that it would start doing something. I guess as they get bigger, they might go out of that threshold. But I imagine just by turning on those forces, the whole thing is going to be stuck together a lot better. Surprised this doesn't tumble down the stairs more. I'd expect it to kind of start rolling down. Maybe the stairs are a little too big for it. Or maybe now that's clumped enough, maybe it will. But I am very entertained by the mechanism of this sticking together. I might have to make a note of that actually for NAB, for dynamic things. So yeah, that was pretty neat. I'm gonna jump back into chat and let's see if there are any other questions. We've hit our 2-hour mark, although I could have gone for a little bit more like rapid iteration of some questions. We didn't get anything too visually exciting, but you're not gonna get them all. Let's see. Quick important notes. Crossfader put a link in the chat for joining the Slack channel, so you can join that for free and continue the conversation with lots of fun friends and keep on doing more work. And there's some cool group projects and whatnot over there. If anybody has any extra questions, hey, KGB's in the house. Oh yeah, and you started going with your We Deliver name. So KGB is one of our Chicago peeps. So yeah, if you have any other questions, jump them in there. In the meantime, I'm going to go over real quick some of the other details here. Snowball friction. Yeah, I'm gonna, oh man, if there was more time of the day, I'd be all up in those X particle settings and trying to learn the differences between those solvers. I mean, I need to, but it should be good. Ralph Snowman, what's going on? Good to see you. It's good to be back. Let's see, while I've got you guys, let's do one more question, I think, if we can do a short one. Oops, wrong button. But real quick, I wanted to jump into the Patreon page and just go over the tiers real quick. So if we were to jump over here, how do I get to it? Patreon interfaces. Oh, I think I go to edit my page to actually list all the, I guess we scroll through the tiers here. But if I were to jump to the tiers here, then we've got, anyway, well, we're getting all over the place here. But, we're just getting going here. This is only the second episode. We're going to be doing more of it, and we're going to be getting deeper into all these different details. The hope is eventually to have, well, I'm going to be having some tutorials. I've got a whole list of ideas here. And right now, this Patreon is my only source of income. So any help you do there, right now I'm actively losing money by doing streams because of the equipment and the rental stuff and the software that costs money. As well as time. So if you want to support, completely unnecessary, but completely and deeply appreciated, we've got some different tiers here that we'll whip through real quick. Cadet is just the student, or it's like a student one. You want to help out, but you're not kind of financially in a position where you can go crazy. So it's just a $2 support. Next up is $5, which would be you get early access to the videos. For instance, this video will be posted up on the Patreon on Thursday, but not put on YouTube until the next Tuesday. The next one is the $10 tier. And this one there's going to be a special live stream. And by the way, don't disappear, especially if you guys are already supporting with $10 because we're going to talk about the schedule for this. But we're going to do a special bonus live stream, and that bonus live stream, all the content for it, like if a final tutorial comes out with it or a cool animation or techniques, those will all be put out in the world. But as far as being there, asking questions, participating in the special bonus stream, then you have to be at the $10 or higher tier. And if you are, then we're going to be doing bigger, longer form projects, and there's going to be polls to vote on them, and there'll be a consistent schedule on how those are airing. We're going to talk about that next. Next up is the engineer tier, which means you get everything prior to it, and you get the scene file. So any scene files I saved here, you will get on the Patreon platform. And then next up is the $50 one, which is pretty much you just really want to support the stuff that I'm doing and trying to pursue here. You'll find out about special guests ahead of time and be able to submit questions for them if they're good questions, and I will ask them. And you'll get extra early access to those interviews with people and all the previous benefits. And then after that is the $100 tier, where you start getting your name in the credits. Actually, you get your name in the credits for $50 as well, but you get special name in your credits. And then there's the final one, which is the huge, crazy one, which is if you're a big, successful studio and something I did was super helpful for you, then you could go and do a one-time or something, $500 one. And it's just, it's important to put the big fish option here just in case somebody wants to do it. And then here I do a big shout out for you by company name, and we put a link to your stuff in the description. So that's just kind of supporting it. Right now, I want to make this I want to be able to have a lot of control over it. I don't want to promise things that I cannot consistently deliver. So that is, the hope is to be able to do t-shirts and merchandise in the future. But, as of right now, that would be a huge time sink, and I think the time is better spent in other places. So we'll see how things get established. I think I saw a question pop up, and I'm going to go ahead and click it. And let's see. Let's go and switch the screen here. So this came in from Jurl Fried. And we are looking at an Instagram post from Wennersted, possibly Stet or Sted, or the T or the D might be silent. I don't know. It looks kind of German. Let's see what we got here. So, okay, we got a fun little animation of this shape spinning around and the nice little tails traveling up and down. It says, there's some sort of sound in here, but it just seems to be consistently spinning. So that's good enough for me. Well, you know what? I think we can, I don't want to replicate too much of what's here. Like the lighting is cool. The design is cool. I love these like copper tubes. I love copper. It's my favorite metal. But let's see if we can just do the basic concept here really quick as a bonus question. So let's see. Let's make a couple of cubes, and we're going to make the cube 20 by 20 by 200. We will make a sexy cloner. Put that in there. Let's go ahead and make a honeycomb array just because I love me some honeycomb arrays. And we're going to put a lot less space in here. So let's divide it by 10 effectively. So those get all nice and clumped up. And now we can add in some extra clones. Nice. So we've got them kind of overlapping every other one. I like it. So now that we've got that, what we're going to do is take this cube and we're going to put into a null. And we're going to move the cube up exactly 100 units. And that is just so that this cube, if I turn off the cloner, the cube is now sitting on the ground and it's in a null, and the null is exactly on the ground. And that gives us a point to scale from. So now we can scale, I guess these might need to be taller. I'm going to T for scale and scale this null up. And we'll just let that happen. Actually, I'll just keep scaling like that. And now I'll make them skinnier again. Skinny, skinny. Okay, so I just need them to be taller because I made them really wide. So we've got those going, and what we need these to do is scale down somehow. But we want them to scale down based on a particular shape of some sort. So what shape should we make? It might be fun. Let's make a motext. I'm gonna make a motext, and let's pull it up in the air, and let's make it. Let's change the font over to the official font of Rocket Lasso, which is Futura. And that's bold. Maybe we could get something a little skinnier. Ooh, let's get a nice skinny one. Okay, Futura book. And let's go ahead and just type in, I'm going to do it lowercase, Rocket Lasso. Okay, so we're doing that, and now we can, oh, I got an extra T in there somehow. Okay, so we'll do that, and let's go ahead and hit T for scale and scale this way up. And what I'm going to do is we're going to have this intersect with this quite a bit. So you can see we got lots of intersection happening there. So what my thought is let's go ahead and make this thing spin. And I want it to spin from the middle. So what's a good way to do that? Can you scoot the letters down? Vertical spacing. No, so we'll just put it into a null. I'm going to hit Alt-G, and let's move this down. I'm going to move the text down so it's like halfway through the ground. Cool. And now we'll move it back, move the null up again so this null can spin. I'm going to use, you could use, I guess we'll just use a keyframe. We're going to make the animation longer. We'll go 99999. And we're going to record the rotation of P. So let's go ahead and actually I want this to be linear. So I'm going to hit Command or Control D. Okay. And now we're going to go to our key interpolation, and I'm going to change our interpolation to linear. So I'm recording linear keyframes. And now, dang it, which was it? It was, yeah, P. So I'm going to record P at the time of 0, and let's fast forward all the way to the end, and let's spin this sucker around, and we're going to spin this around to 720 times 2. That sounds good. Record. Let's see if that's fast enough. Hit play. Okay, I like the way that's spinning, so you can see that we're spinning around like that. And then in addition to that, I want to record it in a linear way. So I'm going to start it over here. And we're going to record the X. So let's grab X, record, fast forward to the end, and let's pull this over to here. So we've passed all the way through. And record. And now, so now we should be able to see this thing kind of rotate and spin. And occasionally it's going to pass through those letters. I guess it's almost constantly doing it, but this is almost exactly what I want. You can see how it's passing through sometimes. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead to our cloner, and we're going to create a MoGraph plane effector. The plane effector is going to not affect the position, but it is going to affect the scale. And to be specific, it's going to affect the scale on Y. So I'm going to actually have it go -1. So essentially, when it's at full power, it's going to scale these down all the way, which might be overboard. But let's go ahead and go to our fall off. Our fall off tab is now Fields, and Fields, of course, is the big one. I guess the big thing of R20. It's not the only thing, but it's the big thing conceptually. So now that we've done that, we are going to go ahead and feed this the motext. So let's grab the motext, feed it in. I'm going to bring it in as a point object, and I'm going to tell the motext actually to be welded shut. I don't know if it makes a difference, but right now the caps and the edges are separate. So if I say create single object, then they're welded together. Cool. So now we fed that in. So now we're bringing this in as a point object. And this point object has a radius. Now let's go ahead and fast forward to some future time here. And I'm going to start increasing our radius until we see some sort of effect here. Okay, now we're starting to see an effect. So the radius was really small because it's based off of the individual points of this object. I think it's based on the individual points. And the pivot point for our object was actually way down there. So we had to make this radius really big. Now, actually, that's it's not exactly what I want to have happen. So we're going to do something a little bit more complicated. I want this radius, but I want it to react to the radius really quickly. So I'm actually going to do is move the entire object up into the air. And now you can see that as I get closer to these points, it's very reactive to where they are. So, but I want them to be, now I want them to be lower. So what I'm going to do is add on a second plane effector that's going to calculate after the fact. And this plane effector is just simply going to move everything down. So now it should be reacting to it in a lot more accurate way where it's really close by. And then after the fact, move it down. So let's see what we get. So let's see, as this R gets close, it's going to go and it's moving them out of the way based on those points of the object. Now, I think we might want to change the subdivision on these because you see this R doesn't have very many points, but the O does. And the O seems to be more accurately reflecting the way it's being manipulated. A couple things we can do. First of all, let's make sure we go to the plane field, go to our fall off, click on the mode text, and we have our radius here. So we can affect the size of the radius. We could make this a little bit bigger. So the smaller it is, the more kind of accurate it is. The bigger it is, the more likely it is to catch. Also, those kind of start blurring together a little bit. And then let's go to our motext, and I'm going to go to object, and right now it's set to angle, but I'm going to change it to subdivided. And now you can see that subdivided a whole bunch. And in fact, depending on what you're doing, I would grab our angle and jump it up to 90. So you can see we got all these maximum length angles, which don't even need to be that big, but we can drop it to maybe like 25. You see 25, 25, 25, 25, 25. And then if we were getting real fancy, we could change our grid type to be like triangles. And you can see it subdivides all these with triangles. So there's a lot more of a subdivision on the overall shape. So with more consistent points for this to see, with any luck, we would see this erasing out the section as it's coming in close. Now, it's not the way we set it up. It's not perfectly going to dodge everything. We have a lot of controls as far as like how much it's scaling down. Like maybe it's scaling down too far. So we can pull this into a point where it's going through. So maybe we don't, we want it to have an effect, but right now it's doing it too much. We can be like, okay, chill out that scaling. It should only be a little bit partial on it. And now that is scaling down. And let's also keep in mind that the trigger point for this is if we turn off this plane effector, it's wherever this 0 point is right there, which is actually an interesting variable here. Because we went with such a big object, if we got with something simpler, a simpler shape, it would be following the curves of it better. But right now, it only cares if the radius we set is getting near to this origin point, and that kind of by itself makes it a little bit tricky. It does make it so that I would want to move this up even farther, so it's just barely having an effect with that surface when it's rotated like that. So now we're going to see more of an overall effect. And of course, we need our second plane effector to push it down. Yeah, I guess the twisting is the trickier part there. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, there's so many different things we could do here. It gets overwhelming. But if we were to, yeah, the effectors do such a good job of moving them around. It makes it so that I want to, how would I want to do that? There's so many different things we might be able to do here. It starts becoming a little overwhelming, I guess, where like there's so many different setups. Like, okay, for instance, let's just go ahead and change this to just one letter. So we'll just make it a letter R, and then we're going to move, let's go ahead and delete everything. So nope. And now we zero this out. And this is actually what I want to zero out. Shift C, PSR. Shift C, PSR. Oh, come on. Get out of there. Apply. Shift C, PSR. There we go. Sorry about that. Now we're zeroed out. Now I'm going to take the letter R and let's center it visually right there in the middle. So now we can animate our null and spin that around. So we could grab that and honestly, you can even use the new MoGraph stuff for this as well. If I were to make a cloner, yeah, why not? This is fun. I'm enjoying myself. Let's go ahead and delete a bunch of things. We're going to put this into a cloner. We're going to make a clone of it, but we're going to make a clone of one. So we got a single clone. And then we want this to start spinning. So I'm going to create a MoGraph plane effector. And the plane effector is going to not affect the position, but is going to affect the rotation. And we don't want to spin that way. We want to spin this way. Cool. So I'm going to set that to 90 degrees. And now in our fall off, I'm going to make a time. And now we're feeding it time. So if I hit play, this should start spinning around. And if I set this to be, or do we feed it a time effect? Does that just stop on one? Oh, we have to unclamp it. There we go. So it was clamped at 100%. So now this will start spinning forever. So it's just going to keep spinning. So there's a million ways we could have done it, but that's a cloner parametric way. No keyframes parametric. So having said that, now we can take our cloner here of these things, and I'm going to make it a radial array. And we're going to make a bunch of them, and we're going to increase our radius. And we're going to zero this out. Okay, apparently it doesn't want us to type in new numbers if it's playing. So we've got that going on. But now if I were to decrease our radius until we're just right there on the edge, and then we hit play. So now if we do kind of the same effect we were doing before, let's move this cloner up onto the top. If I were to add in a brand new plane effector, and this plane effector should, once again, scale things down on Y. So let's say -1. And now let's go back to our fall off. And now I'm going to feed it the cloner. I'm going to put it in, once again, as a point object. But now you can see where our radius is reaching it, that those are what's getting scaled. But I could even increase it more. And now you can see it's kind of taking on the shape a little bit. Well, it's like where the R is near the edge. That is what is getting affected as it spins around. And then this could instead be scaling... it could be the inverse. We could invert the output of this. So remapping, we could say invert. So now those are the only ones that exist. So boom, right away, that's kind of cool. I like that. And then, of course, and someone just said in the chat, you beat me to it by like 1 second. We want to add in a delay effector. Now we are feeding this through a plane, and then we can start adding in additional effectors into it, but we could also add them in, add in some different modifiers here. So we've got our modifier layers here. So we could start adding in things like our decay. So by adding in this decay, we could start increasing it where it's going to start leaving a longer tail behind it. And then I think that if we want to set that to additive, or is it calculate afterward? I'm doing something wrong. Well, it's smoothing it out. I thought that decay let it get up to it really quick and only fall off. Maximum, minimum. Oh, okay, yeah, I just needed to set to min. So now you can see that if I have this at 0, it's just kind of popping out. But if I start adding in this effect with a decay with a minimum, then you'll see it starts having like a longer tail. It has longer to fall off from that effect. So now we get this really cool, like slowly constantly melting effect turning around. And effectively, this is the same thing as in the reference, but it's just a little bit more interesting. Or it's not more... I didn't mean more interesting. It's a completely different way of building it and controlling the way this lays out. In fact, we go to our cloner, and if we were to change our transform and spin this around 180, I think. Or nope, that didn't like 180. There we go. If I spin this around 180 that direction, and we chill out how big our cubes are, then we can actually be pointing them on the inside. I guess I kind of like them better on the outside. So yeah, we get these twirling out that way, but then we can also add on, just inside this plane effector, we could go and add on a delay effect, and then we'll make it spring, of course. And if we make it very springy, then you'll see that this effect will shoot out and then shrink in, and now we get the decaying springing effect. Or we could spring and then decay. And like all the combinations of ways that this could be added on becomes insane. We could set a color fall off on here. So these are actually being affected by color and delay. And then we can remap the color in the plane effector. If we go into our color remap, then we can set exactly what is going on in here. And we can set it as a gradient. And these can push in. Of course, we're going beyond 100%, so that's where the colors get a little bit broken. So I tend to do colors and objects as a separate rig. But yeah, these two separate things being fed in together, and depending on what letter you feed in, we could go and type in a letter A, and now that's going to be a slightly different layout than some other one. You could animate the letters moving forward. We could increase our radius on the way this plane effector is being applied, so that we're going to get blending layer there points. So we can increase that so that these will be a little bit more uniform around. And I guess turning off the delay in plane makes it more clear exactly what's being spit up. And then you see we got a little tail coming off of that bit of the R. If we increase more, we'll get more from that. Oh, that's cool. It's like a little mohawk. So that's a cool look. And then we could have that fade in behind or add some delay, get rid of decay, and just add on the springiness. So now they're springing in and out. We can turn off the clamping here, which is actually really important. And by turning off the clamping, right now they can only go from 0 to 100. And so if the spring effect went beyond 100, it couldn't actually spring. But by turning it on, these can spring beyond that. And you can see they can actually go negative as well. You can see they're actually shooting inside after they travel outward. So it's almost a little even hard to see what's going on here. Let's go and chill the spring out a little bit. Because what's funny is it feels like this big circle is spinning, but the circle isn't spinning. Each one of these is an individual clone that is not changing position. It's shooting out, shooting back in again, which is really weird to think about. So it's not actually spinning. But man, is it giving the illusion of spinning. I can't not see the spin. So yeah, we're just barely scratching the surface of some of the stuff that we can feed through here. But man, it's cool. Zoom, zoom. It is fun. I'd probably maybe move this R a little bit so it could catch some of those shapes a little bit better there. Wee. Back to the chat. Yeah, unclamp it, yes. Yeah, like just starting to play with fields, like conceptually some of the stuff is a little crazy. It's a little hard to think about a couple of the details in there. But so much of it is so much fun. I went, and even here, like, I mean, look at how parametric this rig is. Like right now we're just telling this to scale out, but what if we also told it to move? We could tell it to move on Y. So let's see what that does. Like, okay, look at just by adding movement there, we've got all this extra funky movement there. Instead of moving, let's add on some rotation to it. And yeah, let's have it tilt. It's a little hard to tell where it's tilting. Okay, it's just, that's the twisting one. So if we do this, it's actually going to tilt them forward or backward. And then this one should tilt it to the side. So all the same effects, but now being applied to rotations as well. So it starts becoming like the possibilities become insanely endless as these travel around. And then, okay, let's go one step crazier, because why not? Let's go ahead and make a sphere. And the sphere will set to icosahedron. And then I'm going to grab the sphere and hit the layer T for scale and scale this out to there. And let's go ahead and change our cloner to not be a radial clone, but a object-based clone. It's going to clone onto that spherical object. And that is all well and good. I'm going to turn off that plane effector for a second so we can see exactly what we're getting. So it's cloning right now onto the surface. I don't want the surface. I want one per polygon center. And now we need to fix our rotation. There we go. So if we spin these all out to a -90 on our absolute setting in our transform, then you see these are all spinning out. And now we can just increase the count of polygons on our icosahedron. And now we're going to get this nice porcupine quill. We can hide our sphere. But now if we turn our plane effector back on again, then what should be, okay, we got these little flat nubbins that we'd have to get rid of. But now we've got this spinning around, doing it on the outside of a sphere. Why don't we calm it down a little? Let's get rid of the rotation. So we're just dealing with the scaling here. Already super cool. So we could fix this by just having it be a uniform scale. And I'm going to say -1. So now they all shrink down. So these are actually infinitely tiny, so you can ignore those points. So now we've just got these little spikes all shooting out wherever that R is getting near touching. But let's go ahead and change it so that we are not just spinning on, let's not just spin on one axis, let's spin on the others as well. So let's do a 45 and a 15. So now all I did was change the numbers there, and now you can see that our R is randomly rotating to all these different orientations. And man, that's freaking cool. Like, look at all that crazy motion that we're getting, all this extra growth. And it's such a simple rig. Look at the insanity of like the way we would layer these things up. And it also goes to a lot of the like Fields questions. I think are going to be always the most interesting moving forward on like on this on the Rocket Lasso live questions, because there's so many crazy possibilities, and we are just barely starting with this. I mean, okay, these are actually, do they shoot past 100? Because now that these aren't going past 100, we could turn on color again. So we can have the color feeding through here. And what's going on? Parameter, fall off. I guess those just automatically affect the color. Color, gradient. Yeah, funky. So actually, even that, you see how it took a little while for that to transition one to the other, but we could feed that through and then feed in a green color. So that gets fed through. So now, boom, automatic color going on there. We can potentially tell this to also affect the visibility. No, we don't want it to do visibility. I was just hoping we could get rid of these dots that are kind of visually in our way, because if we render, we wouldn't see those. But yep, all of those automatically doing their thing on the surface. Freaking cool. And yeah, I mean, once again, everything's crazy parametric. We could go and increase the number of these spikes that are through here. The initial creation, they have to shrink down to their position. So boom, all these fanning out. So yeah, I mean, we could infinitely tinker and play with this. And most of the stuff we just changed are just things in fall off. Like if we chill out this decay so they can shrink back faster. So now it's just maintaining that shape a little bit more, but a little bit of decay is pretty fun, like lagging them behind. So let's see, any, yeah, it doesn't look like any follow-up questions specific to this one. There is so much more cool, fun stuff we're going to be able to do when it comes to these, where some of the specific dynamic questions could, or not dynamic, the snow particle rig stuff is something I'm going to have to spend a bunch of time on when I have a bigger window of time to just tinker around and play. But okay, that's a bonus half hour on there, because I wasn't too happy with the results of the first one, so it was fun to get a bonus one in there. Laser just saying that you'd want to see a word instead of just one letter. I mean, it's not going to improve things too much depending on the way you have it set up, because right now it's only counting on the points on here. So a word would just be like points on the left and points on the right, the edges where they're near intersecting on the outside. So not nearly as interesting. But I mean, a modification of this rig could be significantly interesting, which would be if we were instead cloning onto a plane. So let's grab this plane object. We're going to say that we're cloning onto that instead. And now if we were to take our letter R, let's just turn off all of our rotation. And we've got our letter R. If we were to tell, I know it's still in the transform, but if I were to just lie it down, there we go. So we lie this down to that angle. Then, I guess we'd want to do -90. Boop. Okay, so now we are now extruding upward the scales of these as text. So you can see we've got exactly that text popping up. So if we were to chill that out a little bit, let's go ahead and scale down our cube and scale up. Actually, yeah, we got to do that. And then we have to increase this and increase that. Cool, now we get that. So now look at that. We get that as easy as that. And of course, if we were to grab our text and put in, let's just do rocket, and then T for scale, scale it down so it's small enough that we can actually get the entire word in here. How do I keep on getting the extra letter T? Move this over. What's going on here? My navigation's going on a little wonky. Oh, it's because I'm in the cloner. I was trying to move the object as a clone, and it still hasn't refreshed properly. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm just going to yank the letter out because it's getting confused. But yeah, if we did the letters like that and pulled them up, and we feed this in as our source. Bink, override that. So now we can see, and I guess we have to hit play. So, okay, you see how, like, with the way this text looks, there's not much there. But if we started increasing our resolution, so let's jump this up to like 66, 66. So we have a lot more resolution on there. And now look at this really cool fall off that we're getting that quickly. And now we would just go to our plane effector and grab our mode text input, go to the layer tab and decrease our radius. So it's not quite as thick. We keep on pulling this back. Yep. And now just depending on the thickness of that and the radius and everything that we feed that, then that is going to go a really long way. And even though I scale it, like, oh man, it's so cool looking as it moves, blah, blah, blah. And when it pauses is when it might become a little bit more readable. I think based on how big I'm scaling these cubes, it is not readable. Boop. Okay, that's better. Almost readable. And we could do some more polygon subdivisions and whatnot. But like, these are just available to move. We can just grab this and scoot it to one side and bloop. And I'm just doing this live in the viewport, and then eventually it will settle on the text. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and give that a quick save as number 4. Any other questions before we wrap up here, everybody? Let's see, what should we call that? We're gonna call it mode text into, we're gonna have to get real descriptive because I can't just call everything a field because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with fields. But thanks again, everybody. We'll be doing this again next week. If you are planning on becoming a Patreon or a patron and supporting me on Patreon, and or if you're already at the $10 level, stick around and we are going to chat a little bit about some timing on this. Maybe we'll figure it out. But I'm just going to wrap this up right now. So let's go over here. And I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for hanging out and for supporting me. And I'll see everybody next week, if not before. So thank you so much, and bye-bye. So that's going to be the little exit there. Okay, I don't know how far behind we are in the chat. I'm going to go and click on... Well, first of all, it looks like we ran into a couple of little technical issues where... I was given word that the YouTube stopped streaming and that the Facebook stopped streaming. I know Facebook might have like a 4-hour limit, but we did not hit that. And I don't know why YouTube would stop streaming, especially if we were still properly streaming on this. I'm going to wave at the camera, and I want to see what the current delay is because I want to see how accurate my talking with you guys is. But is there anyone here? Oh, okay. So there's only like a 5-second delay, which is really good right now. So are there people here in the chat who are at the $10 level in Patreon or higher? Because I want to at least just have a really brief discussion about how we should go about figuring out when the time is that we should do the bonus stream. Because I want to get those, since it's, the kind of thing where it's like, oh, we can spend more time doing really detailed particle projects and things like that. So... okay, so we got 3 people at least who are at that level, which is really cool. Thank you guys so much for supporting. So let me say, I guess the idea is we want to be able to get the most people as possible. The videos will always be available on Patreon to everybody who can't catch it live, but of course it's more fun when it's live. One of the reasons of putting that at one of the lower tiers is I want more people to be involved in that stream. So... it goes into the timing of it. So like what days are best. So just automatically weekends aren't good for most people. People are going to have very inconsistent schedules. So that's no good. Generically, Friday, I'm just going to say isn't good because nobody, Fridays is the day where people are going out on long lunches, or if they're taking a vacation day, they chop that off. Mondays are just a really busy day. We're already live streaming Wednesday. So for me, it automatically goes to the best days become Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, I don't want to just do another like middle of the day, 2 o'clock. I think it'd be kind of more of a little bit later in the day kind of thing, like when things are starting to chill out a little bit more. So in my mind, a preferable time would be maybe like maybe about 5 p.m. Central Time, which would be starting 3 hours later than this stream does on a Tuesday or Thursday. And we'd be trying to make it consistent. So those are my thoughts. My generic thoughts on that. What's that GMT? That would be 10 p.m. GMT. Whew, I didn't take a single sip this whole 2.5 hours. Yeah, GMT. Because right now I start at 2, but for everybody else it's 7. So if I was starting 3 hours late, it would be 10. So 3 hours later as well. Oh yeah, the medium motion ball cup. Yeah, I love this thing. Like I don't use it because it's from the medium motion ball. I use it because it keeps, if I have some ice water in here and I wake up the next day 8 hours later and look in, there's still a decent amount of ice in here with no cap. It's a great cup. It is nice. Yeah, Zalam is saying that it's the best insulation he's ever seen, and I have to agree. Without a lid, I've got a proper thermos, and it will keep stuff like boiling hot for hours. But for an open cup and everything, like it's crazy. It's crazy good. So based on everything I just said, which would be a Tuesday or Thursday at 5 o'clock is my current preference for being able to do it. I definitely have some flexibility in this, especially if a lot of other people are like, "Oh no, that's not going to work that well." I think we'll probably start a poll on Patreon, and I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to start this because the more people, essentially, I don't want to wait too long before we start doing this. First of all, that you guys are already supporting at that level, but if more people start joining on that level and they're like, "Oh, this time doesn't work for us," and a vast majority of people that's terrible, then that's no good. And I mean, it depends too, because if you're in New York time, then that's like 6 or 7 at night, and at that point, maybe it's good you're at home and it's a little bit more relaxed time, but maybe it's dinner time, maybe it's it could be anything. Yeah, we're not gonna make a decision here. It's more I want to get these ideas in your guys' head and start thinking about it. We will start I'm gonna start a thread on Patreon about this, and you guys are already all on it, so we can start a discussion there, and then eventually I think I'll put a poll up only for people at that threshold, and then we can officially vote on all of the valid times. I think would be the most fair way to do it. And yeah, that'll be fun. And I imagine that, well, I want to do it more project based, but you guys would see me more meticulously spending time in that, well, doing project based things. But I could also see spending a lot of time doing stuff like, oh, let's sit down and we're just going to learn a whole bunch of stuff about X particle fluids. And we'll just start going through and learning the stuff. I mean, they've had it for years, and I still have never played with any of the smoke simulation, the fire and smoke simulation inside of X particles. And it seems like it's pretty good. So we need to do some of that. I just use it for some particles are moving around. I'm going to trace them somehow is how I always use it. But if all of that sounds good to everybody here, then thanks for sticking around. Thanks for supporting again. And I will see you guys all on the Slack channel and in the Patreon posts. So thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye. See you next week. I'm out of here for reals. So toodaloo. Bye-bye. Oh, wait, instead of just cutting off, I can go back to the holding screen.